So my name is Ania Robbins. I live in Austin. I'm the market manager for Spiribam. Spiribam is a spirits division of a French company called GBH, or which is short for Groupe Bernard Oyat. It is a diversified business, which headquarters is on Martinique. So we're based out of Martinique. And rum is our passion as far as that side of the business because the family lives and breathes rum. They found themselves in other industries over the years, but rum has always been the passion for this company. So Clement was the distillery that we started with, and in the late 90s, the group bought distillery JM. At that time, JM was in financial trouble, and they were facing hostile takeover from, I believe, Pernod Ricard, and they actually did not want to be a part of Pernod Ricard because they thought they would kind of diminish the tradition of rum GM and kind of just put them in the mold with everything else. So they turned to Groupe Bernardayat and asked for the buyout. So we bought them out in the late 90s. And pretty much similar story happened to St Lucian Distillers. They were also in financial trouble. And, Martinique is right next to St. Lucia. And our company is known for preserving authentic rum tradition, that happened with GM. Which, by the way, when we bought Distillery JM, it was nonprofit business for a few years because we were restoring, rebuilding, buying new stills, so on and so forth. So we're very interested in preserving the wonderful places GM is. So that's kind of the story that follows the same path with St. Lucian Distillers. So a few years back, GBH acquired SLD, which is St. Lucian Distillers for short. And we started working with them. Texas was actually one of the few states that brought a St. Lucian rum into the country. And we started our rum portfolio here with Chairman's, which, by the way, was in the US at some point. I believe in New York, maybe a couple other states back in the day through Domain Select. So long story short, it is now a part of our portfolio. They produce a great variety of rum and rum styles. When I talk and think about St. Lucian Distillers, I always think about rum recipes because they are known for their blends and their approach to blending. That's kind of, it is their DNA. The place itself is pretty tiny for how big of a variety of things they produce. So very fascinating. So about myself, as I said, I'm the market manager for Texas, Louisiana, New Mexico, and 5 other states for Spiribam. So I manage basically supply chain in this states. But also, like just like with any small spirit suppliers, small spirit company, I have to wear a lot of hats. I, do lots of education events. I look after all my distributors. I look after all my bartenders, bars and restaurants. So it's you kind of do what you have to, more or less. But it's fun. It keeps me on my toes. I've been doing it for 5+ years and enjoy it very much. It's a dynamic job and life and some travel, more before than now, but it's coming back eventually.
Awesome. Thank you.
Any questions so far?
Go ahead.
Nice. Okay. So St. Lucian Distillers, located on the island of St. Lucia. It is right there between Martinique and St. Vincent. If you're on Martinique, you can actually see St. Lucia from there and vice versa. Both islands have lots in common culturally. They speak the same dialect called Antillean Creole. which is a beautiful mix between French and English. Sounds really pretty. St. Lucia is named after St. Lucy of Syracuse, and actually one of the 2 countries in the world named after a woman. Do you guys know the other one? So the other one is Ireland, which is named after Celtic goddess of fertility. Just fun fact for you. Legend states that sailors from France were shipwrecked on the island on December 13th, and that was the feast day of St. Lucy, so they named the island after her. Very simple. The French were the first island settlers, but the island changed ownership between France and England over the course of the history about 12 times. The French took control in 1660, and then the British took final control of the island in 1814. As you can see, the island is split up in different constituencies. They all have names. I want you to remember Denary constituency and also Canaries, which is on the border of Castries and Canaries. And this is where St. Lucian Distillers is at the moment. But Denary is where Geese Distillery used to be, and that was the other existing distillery on St. Lucia. Some facts about St. Lucia. So St. Lucia gained independence in 1979. It is about 238 square miles. The official language is English, but unofficial is Antillean Creole, or Creole, the way they say it there. Again, named after St. Lucy. And the English took control in 1814. The currency there is Caribbean dollar too. So 1931 is a memorable date because that's when Dennis Barnard builds distillery at Denary. That's that constituency on the east side of the island. The Barnard family originally, or Samuel Barnard, one guy and his family came to St. Lucia as a school teacher. And then over the years, he found himself in a mercantile business and eventually started a farm and a distillery. His son, Dennis Barnard, established Denary Estate. That was banana farm, sugarcane farm, a vegetable farm. And then Laurie, the son of Dennis, took control of the farms and the distillery in 63. So now St. Lucian Distillers in the Roseau Valley, which is you saw on the east side of the island. And the existing distillery at the time, which was Geese Distillery on the east side and Denary Distillery on the west side, merged in 72. So they merged into what we now call SLD, or St. Lucian Distillers. So there are no other distilleries on the island. All the rum that you guys drink and buy that comes from St. Lucia comes from SLD, that is in Roseau Bay on the island. And in 2016, Group Bernard Ayat, that's the company I work for, purchased SLD. And again, we're doing the same thing we did with GM. We renovated, repair, expand the cellars, and also, of course, global distribution for the distillery.
Ania, historically, were there other distilleries prior to this, or was 1931 the first distillery in St. Lucia?
So Geese Distillery was the other one that they merged with. I don't remember the date when the Geese Distillery was established. Maybe before that. I can look it up and follow up with you guys. But I know the reason we talk about St. Lucian Distillery tradition even though it is in a yeast distillery locations, because they frankly were making better rum. So that's why I would talk about SLD and Denary Distillery as opposed to, you know, yeast distillery and the family there. The yeast family were more, they also merchants, but they were more so in other trades rather than making rum. And a big part of what St Lucian Distillery is now today is, of course, Laura Barnard, who was kind of pioneer at a time of rum making, and he experimented a lot and experimented with different barrels and finishes and distillates. So he was known around the Caribbean for doing this magical thing with rum. So, but I will look it up. I can look up the yeast distillery story.
Thank you.
I'm gonna make a note of that.
Hey, Ania, while I was doing research on bounty rums, I saw a mention that they were purchasing their molasses from a different island. I think it was Guyana. So I was just sort of curious, when you look at St. Lucia, is there a big you know, sugarcane crop there? Is that still a business there, or was it that ever a big business there?
We purchased, yes, all molasses for production. We were purchasing from Guyana, but then Guyana went through molasses shortage. So we now purchase from Dominica and other Southern American countries. St. Lucia was in the sugar business up until the 70s. And then there was a very fierce competition from cheaper Southern American sugar in other Caribbean islands. So they could not sustain that trade. So all the sugarcane plantations were turned into banana plantations in the 70s. So yeah, St. Lucia is no more in the sugar production, or molasses production for that matter.
Gotcha, thanks.
And speaking of bounty, I have all proper local rum has a jingle, so I'm gonna make you listen to it.
Well, we work so hard, time to celebrate. Let all voices raise. The bounty is great, celebrating excellence, diligence, competence. Hooray for integrity, responsibility, accountability. Let the music, bounty time, bounty on my mind, bounty for the line, make me feel good. Everybody dance, swing, sing, hey! The spirit of St. Lucia, bounty rum. The spirit of St. Lucia, bounty rum. The spirit of St. Lucia, bounty rum.
Hope you were drinking while you were listening to it.
Well, we work so.
I did not mean to play it again. So when two distilleries merged in the 70s, they created a celebratory brand, and as you guessed it was Bounty. So the original Bounty was Bounty Gold, and let's start tasting. So this is this guy right here. I put all of them on the screen. I want you guys to see the range, and all of this is available in Texas and other states, but we're going to limit ourselves to 2 tonight. So let's start with Bounty Gold.
So Ania, I didn't know if you wanted to do this blindly or not. So not everybody knows what the numbers are. What they're, I didn't give that list to everyone. So.
Oh yeah, that's number 1. We're going to taste in the. I hope everybody's bottles have numbers, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So number 1 is Bounty Gold. So Bounty Gold is a column still rum. Distillery has 5 different stills at their disposal, and we're gonna talk about the stills in more detail in a few slides. But Bounty Gold is distilled at column still. It is actually aged, could be aged up to 3 years, and of course we use ex-bourbon barrels. This is a true gold rum where we don't add any color to it. So the color strictly coming from the barrel, the spiciness comes from the barrel. Bounty Gold is really beloved by the locals. This is, I mean, the spirit of St. Lucia. They're not lying about it. They drink a lot of it. There are bounty parties, bounty events, billboards everywhere. They really love this expression. When we brought Bounty line into the US, and right now Bounty White is the most successfully sold bounty in the US, they actually kind of baffled the why the US market loves Bounty White so much. They cannot understand it. But Bounty White is exact same rum, but just charcoal filtered. So it is also aged, but no color, no tanning. So it's softer, more buttery compared to Bounty Gold. What do you guys think?
I like it. I could see how it's a kind of good, just base go-to rum. I assume it's fairly affordable. I'm not familiar with the Bounty products at all.
Yeah, so all Bounties under $20. Yes, very affordable. It is very popular now in better bar programs for the Well Choice. You guys know MMH Group or MML now. So all the places carry Bounty White in the Well. Half Stab, Bounty White in the Well. It's a really great bang for your buck for sure.
Yeah, I can see this working very well as a kind of baseline mixer in cocktails, especially at that price point. It kind of reminds me of some of the younger Barbados rums, like some of the the Dorleys, like 5 and such.
Yeah,
totally. Good call.
Okay, let's move on to number 2, which is going to be Bounty Dark. So Bounty Dark is it's the newest addition to the Bounty line, newest expression. Old Bounty line in a nutshell is mostly column distilled rum. Bounty Dark is the only Bounty that has a little bit of pot still in it. The pot still that we use it could be aged to 6 to 7 years. And then, of course, we added to the Bounty base, which is 3-year-old aged rum. So it's a little bit spicier. It's also 43%, so a little bit higher proof. For those of us who like punchier cocktails, also great mixer.
I had this right before I joined the call, and I was super impressed by this. I just kept like writing more stuff down. I was sort of surprised how complex it was. Like I kept, for the nose, I was like, I got toffee, I got coffee, which I never got coffee on a rum before, chocolate, leather. And then when I tasted it, I got hazelnut, which I never experienced, cocoa. Like I just thought, I was super impressed by it. I wrote a little note to myself, like, go buy this, like after, like my sample wasn't enough. I want more of this.
I like it. Hazelnut is a good one. Yeah, you're right. I can totally see that. I never thought of that note. It's a good call. So let's move on.
Just to clarify, is that gold? Is that 40? I couldn't see on the image online.
Yes. So all of them are 40%, except for the Bounty Dark, and Bounty Dark is the only one that's a little bit higher proof, which is 43.
Gotcha. Thanks.
So let's talk about the man behind the tradition and all the rum that we make nowadays. So Laurie Barnard, or Laurie's legacy, and that's what I wanted to talk to you about. He is a 4th generation, merchant, or he comes from Barnard family who originally, whose great granddad came to the island as a school teacher, and then they developed a mercantile business. He was born in 1945, and in 1963 he joined his father at Denary Estates that grew bananas and sugar at a time, and he took over as the GM of those estates from 69 to 79, but his specific responsibility and focus was the distillery and its modernization and finding a different approach to rum making. But his passion was truly agriculture. During his time at the States, they became the largest banana producing farm in Windward Islands, which employed 500 people. He was the leader in agricultural and diversification. They grew limes, mangoes, different vegetables. The farms also included a nursery for house plants that they then exported to the UK and Dutch and German markets. And another super fun fact that I learned pretty recently myself is that Laurie was awarded for developing a special banana, which is exported to this day. But the reason it was special is because it was sweeter and it lasted longer than any other banana. So he is responsible for that special banana.
I'm assuming it's not the Cavendish banana.
Is it exported to the U.S. and
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Yeah,
what I do know, and I do not remember the strain of the banana. What I do know is that they taste very different over there than they do here. They are smaller and they kind of have a citrusy note to them. They say it's sweeter, but I don't think it's sweeter. It's just a different kind of sweetness. I always want to say that's like peachy sweetness in a way. It's very good. So eventually Laurie became the chairman of SLD from 1809 until he passed away in 2012. Margaret de Montplaisir took over after him. He won multiple awards. He was Business Person of the Year and Caribbean Entrepreneur in 2003. And again, he was passionate about agriculture and growing things. So in 2004, he planted 4 different varietals of sugarcane at the distillery. Now we grow only 2 varietals of sugarcane distillery, and it's a blue and green varietal. The idea behind it was to isolate the proprietary yeast strain, and he was very successful at it. So all the rums that we make now at SLD come from the yeast strain isolated on that sugarcane patch. And at a time when everybody was switching to column stills for efficiency purposes, he was actually buying up pot stills. So that's how we ended up with 3 different pot stills at the distillery. We have a John Dore 1 distillery, which is smaller pot still. We have Vendome still, and which is a hybrid, and the John Dore 2, which is a bigger version of John Dore 1, essentially. So the idea I had in mind is to use those stills to distill fresh sugarcane. And that became possible for the first time on a commercial scale in 2010. We made about 20 barrels of rum with fresh sugarcane distillate.
I have a quick question, Ania.
Mm-hmm.
Being that it seems like rum production didn't begin in St. Lucia till the 20th century, so it doesn't have like the heritage of places like Barbados and Jamaica that originally were using pot stills and didn't adapt to column stills till much later.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks like they didn't have a pot still in St. Lucia till the 90s. So when they first started distilling, it was all column still.
Yes, from what I understand and know, yes, correct.
Okay.
So, and that's kind of, history in reverse. If you compare it to the other Caribbean islands, he was saying, everybody started with pot still and then started switching to column still, and then happened kind of in the reverse in St Lucian Distillers, which is very interesting and peculiar. So back to raw material. Let's actually start tasting the third rum. Why not? Let's do number 3, and that will be Chairman Reserve Original. So, and I'll talk to you guys about raw materials that we use. The first one, of course, is molasses. Most of the rum that we produce is made from molasses. What is important to remember that all the molasses that we use is Bon Sucre certified. So it used to come from Guyana, not anymore. It now comes from Dominican Republic and other South American countries. And Bon Sucre is a nonprofit organization that basically certified molasses suppliers and promotes sustainable sugarcane production and also processing and trade around the world, making sure that the people that source and produce molasses are well taken care of, more or less. So that's very important to us. So molasses is brought onto the island about 3 times a year. It comes in concentrated, and then we dilute it at the distillery. There's a very interesting delivery method that I'll show you pictures of, very fascinating, but it is delivered through molasses pipeline. And then we also use raw sugarcane juice that, of course, sourced from that patch of sugarcane that Lori planted. Right now we have 2 cane varietals, which are blue and green. We harvested once a year, and we use 2 roller mill compared to Martinique, which is 3 roller mill usually. And it is the origin of our proprietary E strain that all our rum is made with.
So how similar is the blue cane variety on St. Lucia to the one that is made on or the one that is on Martinique?
It's
Con Bleu.
It's the same varietal.
Okay, so it doesn't just come. It's not only found on Martinique. That varietal is found elsewhere.
Oh, correct.
Okay.
I don't know. It might have different names in other parts of the globe, perhaps, because I can't answer that question for sure. But because the islands are so close to each other, and they do have so much in common culturally and agriculturally.
Right.
It is the same varietal in this case, yes. Okay. And the green varietal that we use is the same as in Martinique. Speaking of molasses delivery method, so this is where St Lucian Distillers are. It is located in Roseau Bay. This is Roseau River that's at the foot of the distillery. The Roseau Bay is where molasses tanker parks. Is it the right word? What's the right word? Anchors. That's the right word. What happens is we take the submarine hose, we raise it from the seabed, and we hook it up to the ship like this, and then they start pumping molasses through this hose. So on the water, onto the Roseau Bay, it comes out on shore like this, and then the pipe goes all along right here, the Roseau River, and directly to the distillery and to the tanks at the distillery. So you can see how convenient it is strategically to have the distillery in that location as opposed on the other side of the island. How long
has that pipeline been there?
It's been there since they moved the location of the Denary distillery, which is at least since the 70s. But I want to say since the 30s, since the Geese distillery was there originally. No, Mike, I take it back, 70s, because they were out of sugar production after the 70s. So the pipeline, they built the pipeline in the 70s.
You know, I got a little hint of cast iron, so I'm thinking that might be where that's from. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
So the molasses pipeline itself is about 1 mile, and it's home to the tankers. At the distillery, we have 6. This is just another view of molasses tanker. And this is what they look like. So we bring the hose to the tanks, put the molasses in there. Again, it comes in concentrated and we dilute it later. What do you guys think of Chairman's Original?
A lot richer. It has a very molasses forward flavor, I think.
It never hit me before, but I was pouring those hundreds of little bottles the other day for your samples, and all I could smell is blueberry pie crust. You know, when it gets burned on the in the oven, that blueberry filling gets stuck to the crust and it gets burned. That's all I could smell. I've tasted that
I
rum.
get blueberry, so.
Yeah, I've tasted that rum so many times and never hit me that way. Maybe it's just like tiny bottles being all around me. But that's all I can think now when I think about Chairman's Original.
Is this aged in is it aged in bourbon casks? Because I got a real bourbon flavor when I drank it.
Definitely, yeah. So the majority of barrels that we use are going to be either New American Oak or used American Oak. So yes, there's definitely lots of used American Oak in there.
Yeah, that's the first time I can think of where I really sort of tasted that you know, there's so many rums where they're aged in all these different barrels and it's like, oh, I can sort of taste that, I guess. But this was the first one where I was like, oh, I actually like smell and taste bourbon on this, which I thought was kind of interesting.
What is the makeup of this, like as far as age of the rums in the blend, and is there any additives, like color additives?
We allow about up to 2% of caramel just for consistency, but it's rarely, I mean, it's not more than that. And that said, no dosage, nothing else. So all our rums are going to be unaltered in that sense.
Is there pot still in the blend?
Yes, and I'll give you the blend breakdown in just a little bit. Let's talk about water. So we have 2 water sources at the distillery. We harvest rainwater from the roofs of the distillery and the office building. This is an office building on the left-hand side. It's treated through reverse osmosis, so it's stripped of all the mineral content. And we use the rainwater for blending and reducing to proof. And we also use local pond water, which is, of course, in the Resort River. And that water is high in mineral content, so it's really nice to use for fermentation and steam production. And then I already mentioned yeast. We work with 2 types. The first one is used for all our rums that comes from that Planet sugarcane patch. It's about 15 acres at the distillery. We use it for Chairman's, Bounty, Admiral Rodney, all our rums. And the second yeast strain is used for liqueurs that we make that will eventually make it into the US. Supposed to be this year. Not more, not this year. Okay, fermentation. So fermentation is pretty straightforward. The facilities we have are pretty small, so we use propagation tank. Yeast is trickle into reproducing instead of fermenting in propagation tank. It takes about 10 to 12 hours, and then the propagation is completed, and then that mixture goes into mother tank with more wash. To start the process all over again. And then the wash is pumped into the open air fermenters. There's a little picture of 2 mother vessels on the right and the propagator on the left. This is actually our fermentation area. This is it. Like all you see in the picture is all there is. So it's not big at all. The tanks are open air, as I said. Fermentation takes about 24 to 36 hours, and we ferment to about 7% ABV. Any questions here, guys?
Is the same wash put into each batch, or are there different recipes?
Same wash.
And is the open air just to do some kind of wild fermentation, or what's the reasoning there?
So it adds to it, of course, just like at any distillery that use that method. But again, we use that our proprietary yeast strain for all our rums. Mike, to answer your question, we use yeast B for liqueur. So if we're making distillate for liqueurs, it's going to be different yeast. But for the rums that we're tasting today and for all straight rums, it's the same yeast, the same wash.
Wouldn't that concrete be super porous? I feel like that would
get, yes.
Yeah, like moldy or have issues with impact.
I think they want that.
I
think the one character, I think it's prized in the rum world and other spirit world.
Cool.
We don't want sterile spirits. They don't taste good.
Give me that funk.
Right? It's just a little bit close up of fermentation tanks. That's my excuse to have a sip of rum. All right. So the fun part, another fun part. So as I mentioned, we have 5 different stills, 3 of them are pot stills, and 2 are column stills. The reason I say 2 is because it's a double column still, which is traditional coffee. This is just pictures of our stills, a little stats. For those of you guys who like stats, I actually never can remember numbers and capacity, so I put on the screen for you. I just know that John Dore is smaller than John Dore 1 is smaller than John Dore 2, and that John Dore 1 was the original pot still. John Dore 2 we got in later. And then Vendome still is the one right here is hybrid. It's rectification. It has rectification between kettle and condenser, and it was purchased from Angostura. It has 9 plates. So all of them can distill molasses, of course. We distill fresh pressed sugar cane on John Dore 1 and Vendome still.
How high can the ABV get on the Vendome? Does it just do one pass, or does it have to go through it again?
So because it is a hybrid still, you don't have to clean it up between the batches. How high? See, I told you I don't remember the stats, so I'm gonna make it up.
When you say hybrid, does that mean it's a cross between a pot and a column still?
Yes, correct. So it has rectifying plates in it, which is not usually the case, and it has 9 plates. So yes, it's a cross between. I know they utilize this kind of still in Kentucky for some whiskeys, so that's kind of common. But yes, you're right. It's a cross between pot still and column still. So I'm making a note, ABV on Vendome.
This might be kind of an ignorant question or whatever, but do these pot stills or these column stills, do they wear out? Like, is there a life expectancy on these, or can you just continue to use them forever?
For sure. We just had to repair John Dore 1. Yeah, they do wear out. I mean, if you think about distillation, you know, in any distillation, you will have certain parts of the distillate that's volatile. So that's, I'm sure, damaging in a lot of ways to the equipment. And even like just good alcohol, it's also damaging. Yes, we had to make some repairs recently. Definitely wear out.
Not to go off topic, but I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the workforce that you have there. You know, we had a recent meeting where we were talking about Haiti, where they have I think the official count is a gazillion. There's a gazillion distillers there. And so there's a huge workforce there. So I'm curious if you guys have just one, if there's just one distillery in St. Lucia, like, do you have trouble with getting talented workers or skilled workers, I should say?
So St. Lucian, yeah, we actually very lucky, but also it comes from treating people the right way. So, you know, if you don't work at a resort on St. Lucia, you probably work at a distillery, or you a permit laborer that comes from a different island. Most of our employees, I'd say probably 95% under long-term contracts. We have some part-time job contracts. We don't have any permit laborers at the distilleries. So people that have been there, they've been there for a long time and they want to stay. We provide a lot of benefits for the workforce. We employ right now 129 people. So no trouble finding in this situation. I guess the reason for that, the main reason, is because we treat people right and they want to stay. Margaret de Montplaisir, who's now CEO of the company, he's been with the company for, I don't want to say the number because it's been a really long time, but when I chatted with her last, she said, like, I started with a company where it was just me and a driver driving around the island to the resorts, just hand selling rum. And now she's CEO of the company. So that gives you an idea of how the careers go at SLD. So people do want to stay.
Nice, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm. I'm really proud of it. You know, not just with this distillery, but you know, GM Distillery and Clermont Distillery. I'm really proud for the way we treat people, and really proud working for this company for that reason. So.
Nice.
I'll give you some facts at the end too about who we have working there and who's in charge. But our distiller now is Ian John. It's very hard to get a picture of him, so I don't have a picture of him. But he's our distiller now. All right, back to the stills. The final still, or the fifth still that we have, is a coffee still. It was commissioned in '85. Again, some stats on there that I can't remember. But what I do remember is that we can pull distillate from 2 different plates. And it's actually 3 different plates. For our purposes and our tasting today, it's 2 different plates. So the highest plate is plate 40. And the highest ABV mic on the plate is 95%. Plate 32 is medium plate, and we use that distillate for Bounty at Chairman's blends. And the lowest plate distillate is used for production of Chairman's and Admiral Rodney. So the lower plate in the still is the more flavor and fatty acid and congeners you will have in a distillate. So hence the price point, hence the mouthfeel and all those wonderful things. The highest plate distillate is used for Denros Strawn. The name Denros comes from combining Dennery and Roseau. As you guessed it, you know, the former 2 distilleries that merged in the 70s. So that's where the name comes from. It's a very, very strong rum. We don't bring it in the US. We mostly sell it locally to local resorts, all-inclusive resorts. So if you get a Bahama Mama or a Mai Tai, an all-inclusive resort on St. Lucia, chances are it's going to be made with Denrose. So beware, it's strong. Also, if you go to St. Lucian Market on Friday or Saturday night, there's going to be lots of stalls and tables that sell their homemade spiced rum. Locals are allowed to buy rum in bulk from the distillery, and is of course Denrose rum. So they go home and they spice it and they resell it at Castries at the farmers market. So also very strong. All right, so now we on to the aging, and let's do Legacy is the next one we're tasting. And that's number 4, right? Number 4. So Laurie Bernard was experimenting with lots of different barrels, and he not only experimented with finishing rum in exotic barrels, he also experimenting with aging rum in exotic barrels all the way through. So we have an incredible inventory of different barrels at the distillery. I think they counted about 9,000 barrels as of right now. A lot of them are wine barrels like Chardonnay or port, Sauternes, sherry, and then brandy, lots of brandy barrels. So we have tons of different barrels. Some of them I use, some of those rums finished in those exotic barrels I use for commercial blends, such as I don't know, Rodney Princessa or 1931. But we also started doing single barrel and small batch expression a couple years ago. So some of those barrels are extraordinary just on their own without being blended with other barrels. So we're releasing them on their own. So I have small batch and single barrel releases coming here in September. I'll definitely make a post a bit about it, guys, when those barrels hit the stores. How do we feel about Legacy?
That pot still funk is very prevalent in this one.
Yeah.
So is this the Vendome or the John Dore or both?
Both. So Danny Duplessis, he is here on the picture. He's taken over as our master blender recently, and this is his first blend independently. So he's been working at the distillery for a long time, but now he's taken over. And I am very impressed. I know I'm not supposed to have favorites, but this is one of my favorite rums that I have in the portfolio. The St. Lucian Distillers don't really care about age statements, so you don't see age statements in any of our expressions. They always talk about maturation. They believe that super older rums cannot be as expressive on their own as it could be blended with other younger rums. That was Laurie Bernard's philosophy, and that's what they follow now. And that's why when I say, you know, St. Lucian Distillers are good at rum recipes, that's what I mean. They'll do lots of blending, and I'll show you the breakdown of some of these rums. It's pretty incredible. So we tasted Chairman's first after Bounty, out of all Chairman's Original after Bounty Dark. This is a breakdown on Chairman's Original. So the raw material here is going to be 100% molasses. We use John Dore pod distillates, which is of course molasses distillate. And we use coffee still distillate that comes from both the lowest plate and the medium plate of the still. We use ex-bourbon barrels for aging. All the rum is aged separately, and then we blend it together and then age them together for 6 more months to kind of meld it together. So overall, again, it's not an exact statement. It's not quite what Martinique does with, the youngest rum in the blend on the bottle. The average age of this blend is about 4 to 5 years. Compared to Chairman Legacy, we have 2 raw materials here, molasses and then sugarcane. So molasses is distilled in the bigger pot still and then in a hybrid still. And then sugarcane is distilled in a smaller still. And then the coffee distillate comes from, again, a lower and a medium plate of the still. So you can see with all the stills at the distillery, with the E strains, with all these barrels, how many elements and brush strokes we have to play with, and why we have such a great variety of things we can make and surprise people with. Does that explain it a little bit? Oh, and I actually made a little note here for myself, so don't forget to tell you. This is my favorite drink to make with Legacy right now, and that's what I'm drinking tonight. It's I call it a toddy. It could be hot or cold, and it's very simple. It's 2 ounces of Legacy, half lemon, half maple syrup, and fresh nutmeg on top. It's so good. And you can make it with hot water or you can stir it on ice, and it's really, really good. Doesn't need much.
No, I've had trouble finding the Legacy in stores in Austin. I know you said that it's available here, but I've asked Shaker a couple times, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I think we used to have it." Do you know of anyone carrying it? Oh, Ryan just said Wiggy's has it.
Yes, they do. And it's, oh God, I sometimes people are great that are working at Shaker and sometimes they're not. But if it was Kiki, she would text me as like, "Hey, where's Legacy?" But then they usually carry it. It's not a limited edition, so that if they want it, they can have it on the shelf. But also, you guys free to text me, and I can push my people to put them back on the shelf if they ran out.
Which number's Legacy?
What's that?
Which number's Legacy? Is that 4 or?
Number 4.
Number 4, yeah.
Thank you.
Also, I know Travis Hyde's Wine and Spirits just picked them up this weekend, so you can find them there. You guys know that store? It's on off 35, right next to Whippin', former Beverage World.
Does it share a wall with them?
What's that?
Does it share a wall with Whippin'?
Yeah, it's a great store. Yeah, it's a great store. They have Legacy now.
I did not know that. It's good to know.
Top of my head. Yeah, that's one of those things that we just got it in the portfolio, so it's not as widespread as I'd like it to be. But again, ask me, ask your store, and we'll get it through.
A question about that Bounty Premium Gold.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was very sweet, but I know that can be, you can get that impression different ways. But I don't mean this as an insult or anything, but is there any sugar added to that?
No, not at all. We don't add any sugar to any of our rums, for the exception of spiced rums, because it's just the style. But no sugar. No sugar.
Gotcha. Thanks.
So since Legacy is the newest blend we have, I just kind of wanted to give you a little bit more insight on how we created it. So it's Danny's first creation, and took about 6 months. He made 15 different rum blends, and then he narrowed it down to about 3 prototypes. And then the first batch was blended in July 2020, and first bottling was done in August. The rums age separately, which is true for all Chairman's line. All our expressions are aged separately, and it's 5 to 6 years. And they come out of the barrel about 63% ABV. And then we retrieve their own from individual casks, and then blend them together and age them together for, again, about 6 more months. So it's a long process. It's a lot of rum to taste too. Let's do Forgotten Cask, which is number 5. So Forgotten Cask actually has a story behind it. We have a crazy fire at the distillery in 2007. They actually believe it was an arson. Nobody was ever found out, but they talk about it as an arson. One of the cellars burned down, and they had to consolidate the cellars with others and shovel things around, essentially. About 4 years later, when they rebuild and reorganize, why it took 4 years, I don't know, because island people, I can't find any explanation. So when they finally reorganized, they discovered a cask that was supposed to be pulled for Chairman Reserve Original, and it was forgotten about. So they tasted the rum out of the cask. They actually loved the way it tasted. So it was released in the UK only as a limited edition bottling. And then when that cask ran out, people continued asking for it. So now we essentially simulating the extra aging process, and we make an expression that's called Forgotten Cask, which is extra long aged Chairman's Original. So the average age here is 6 to 11 years, but it's exact same blend as Chairman's Original, just aged a little bit longer.
Wow. Wow. Because I don't think they taste. I would never have guessed that. That's great.
Yeah.
What's the evaporation rate in St. Lucia?
It's going to be about the same as Martinique, which is 8 to 10%. So pretty high.
Yeah, per year.
8 to 10% a year.
Yeah, for sure. More molasses notes. I mean, I really like this one. I like this one more than number 4 or number 3. I guess that's what aging does.
Yeah, but I always say there's rum out there for everybody. Rum is such a diverse and interesting category. I mean, rum from Martinique is so vastly different than rum from Jamaica or even from St. Lucia. So I always try to convince people they should find a rum for themselves when they tell me they don't like rum. There's no such thing. All right.
So I'm sorry, can you clarify when you were saying you found that one barrel after the fire, did they actually bottle that? I'm just confused. Was that the actual rum that they bottled that initially when they sent it to the UK?
Yes, they bottled that barrel, and they released it in the UK because it was just one barrel, so they couldn't release it everywhere. And people loved it, so they kept asking for it after we didn't, after we ran out. So now we just calling it quote unquote Forgotten Cask and simulate that extra aging.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's like a whole different aging style, right? Like burn the edges of the barrel a little bit. Like that's high heat. I mean, that's pretty crazy.
I know. I actually asked that question at the distillery, like which one tastes better, the now Forgotten Cask or the original Forgotten Cask, the one that happened by accident? And they said now, but because it's more refined now and not an accident, it's a controlled process. but yeah, it's they released it, and I guess that's how we now have Forgotten Cask. There's a signature on the bottle, and it's a master cellar master signature. He swears to God that he knew the barrel was there the whole time. He just couldn't get to it, but everybody still makes fun of him at the distillery and how disorganized he is. So who knows? But that's the story.
Hilarious.
So the last straight rum expression that we're tasting is 1931. And that's the date when Denary Distillery was established. To me, this is kind of the peak of what St. Lucian rum recipe can be. This is the most complex blend we have. What you see on the screen is just more simplified breakdown of this rum blend, but truly there are 11 different elements in this blend. So the ages range from 6 to 11 years. We use fresh sugarcane distillate, distilled and pot still in it. We also use rum finish in export barrels in this blend. We utilize 3 different stills here. We utilize 2 different raw materials. So this is very, very, I mean, that's one of my favorites too. It's very interesting and very complex, but I'll let you guys talk. I'm going to stop talking about it.
The first time I had 1931 was the pink label, which I think is the 5th or 6th edition. Is the new one that's under the chairman's, I guess, label or umbrella, how does that differ from the ones that were originally from the St. Lucia Distillers?
So the reason that we're doing it under chairman's umbrella now is because in a nutshell, it's a blend between pot and column. Was different. That's why they had different color labels. Now this blend is going to be consistent year to year. What used to be different on the 1931 label, now we're releasing as single barrels and small batches. So different blends, unusual barrels, all of that is going to be under the release of small batch expressions. So we're kind of trying to trying to help consumer to understand all the madness, because between 10,000 barrels at the distillery and all this blend, that I'm sure it's hard to keep up. I have trouble sometimes. But yes, now the 1931 blend is consistent. Before it was different every year. That's why you saw different color labels on it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. What do you guys think?
It's delicious. I wish they had the original 1931s, Anya, which I'm sure you might talk about, the colored bottles. But the new expression is also very good.
If you go to St. Lucia, you might be able to find bottles here and there, and sometimes even in duty free. But I don't know at this point.
Yeah,
I gotta do a distillery tour. Maybe they have some left over.
Yeah, I actually did do a distillery tour about 5 years ago, and I picked up the teal bottle and the pink bottle. I should have picked up one of each color because I think they had all 5 at the time back then.
Yeah. But we are actually improving on the distillery tour and experience. It's going to be different and better. So hopefully you can do another one soon. Everything's under construction right now. All right. You guys ready for some spice rum?
Yeah.
As long as it's not Kraken.
That's not spice rum.
I know.
So spice rum is actually a huge tradition on St. Lucia. showing you guys some pictures from Caster's Market. It's the biggest Caster's Market, biggest farmers markets on the island. It's the constituency close to St Lucian Distillers. I already mentioned that locals can buy a rum from the distillery. So what they usually do with it is spice the rum and then resell it at the farmers market. So this is a picture of one of the spiced rum shops. All these bottles right here are infused essences with different local herbs and barks. So you can either buy an essence separately and then go home and play with it. Or like right here in the background, you'll see bottles stuffed with dry spices and dry fruits. You can also buy that. Or you can buy ready-made spiced rum. So people love it, people drink it. And this is a little close-up picture as well. So this is spices, dry spices. You can add your own rum, or you can buy different essences and make your own. So it's really cool. You can see a empty handle of Chairman's bottle here too. So that's how it's done. It's fascinating. The biggest spice rum shop at Caster's Market has probably 30 different expressions of spice rum. And you kind of go in there and you try all the ones you want, very similar to an ice cream shop experience. There was one I tried that infused with weed, which was not the best. Seems like a good idea. It was not good. But there were lots of others that were delicious. So, and then you kind of pick the one you want and you fill up your bottle and you go home. So, so what is in our spice rum? We have two. Bounty is the one that we're not tasting right now, and Chairman's is the one that we're tasting. That's the last one, number 7. Both of them have a lot of the same ingredients, with Bounty being more of a straightforward, more traditional recipe. Bounty has clove, cinnamon, and vanilla. So does Chairman. And also Bois Bandé. Bois Bandé is a local bitter tree bark that they believe has aphrodisiac and healing qualities. It kind of finds its way into everything on the island, including the spiced rum. So Chairman's, clove, cinnamon, vanilla, Bois Bandé. It also has orange peels and lime peels. It has coconut meat. It has sour cherry and wax apple, which are local fruits. Very delicious. The base for the rum is the same as Chairman's original. So it's aged rum base. The way we make it, because we work with natural spices and actually whole spices, not even macerated spices and fruits, we make it the same way the way the bitters are made. Each ingredient is infused separately because each ingredient will need its own time to infuse. I used to play before I came on the supply side, and I used to play with making my own spiced rum. Chairman's was not on the market yet, and made a couple of mistakes of throwing a lot of clove in the overproof agricole, and it infuses super fast. So you just need 1 probably or 2 per 3 liters of rum. So yes, that's the reason we infuse everything separately, and then we just blend everything together. Again, blending is a key word, just like bitters. Have you had this one before?
Got a bottle of it.
Hey, that answers the question.
And in the chat, there's been a lot of feedback, a lot of people getting their tasting notes. And I think there's kind of a preconceived notion against spiced rum, like when people get to a certain point of their rum journey that they kind of frown upon it, because things like Kraken, things that are below 40% that aren't technically rum is what dominates the market. So it's nice to taste something that's, I mean, is refreshing. taste something that has so many delicious notes. So,
Totally. Yeah, I think Mike, when, you know, obviously I have like 30 plus something bottles of rum in my portfolio. And when you look at it, it's like people expect all these things to taste wonderfully because it's all authentic and wonderful rum. But everybody kind of just turns up their nose at spiced rum because, again, they have a you know, concept of spiced rum, and it's not usually a good one. So spiced rum definitely surprises people the most when I taste people on my rums.
Ania, I don't think you mentioned it, but I know that St. Lucia Distillers does something pretty unusual for a distillery, which is a peanut liqueur. Is there any?
Nuts and rum?
Yeah, nuts and rum.
Yeah, we make that. Things are supposed to come in the US in this year. So
oh, that's the question I was going to ask. Is it ever coming here?
The plan is to bring some of those things here, and who knows when it's going to be now. So yes, we make a line of liqueurs. One of them is nuts and rum. Pretty delicious, pretty nuts, but it's a peanut butter liqueur for those of you who don't know. But yeah, it's delightful.
Yeah, I still got some old bottles from when it was available in the US, like, I don't know, 7-8 years ago. And it is so delicious. It is so good.
Yeah. So yeah, one day. All right. So I just wanted to give you guys one slide about SLD and what it is now. I know we talked a lot about history, but and you had some of the questions of who we employ and how we do things. So Margaret Montplaisir is a CEO of the distillery now. She took over after Laurie when he passed away in 2012. And as I mentioned, she used to, I mean, she's done it through the ground up, as I said, like just driving around Ireland selling rum with one driver, and there was just their sales force at a time. We currently employ 129 people on full-time contract, and then 14 on temporary contracts. But over 30% of the workforce is women, or actually almost half. And over 30% of management team are women. We offer medical insurance for everyone split the cost 50-50 with all employees. The benefits are equal for everybody, no matter the position they hold. And then if necessary, we give out medical loans with attractive and affordable payback terms. There's also an education program at the distillery. So we offer to all our employees, again, we fund 100% of the cost of adult literacy. And if you want to pursue higher education, we will cover 50% of that. In some cases, we can cover 100% of higher education programs, and you know, through the contract that we'll ask you to work at the distillery up to 3 years. We also give out personal and shelter loans to our employees for improvement project, purchase and planning, basically to improve the quality of life. And then if somebody is in trouble with debt or any other issues, we offer free assistance on that. All the staff loans that are given are always interest free. And it's just like one of the examples of what we do for the community. Again, I'm really, really proud for the people and the community that created around the distillery. So kind of unrelated, but when we started Bounty brand here in the US, and it's so beloved, and people obsessed about Bounty on the island, it was like, oh, maybe we should update the label, you know, just to make it more attractive for the US consumer. And it was a hard no on that for us. So we just roll in with the old label, but we respect the love and the decisions they make around, you know, the products that they produce. So after all, that's why they are in our portfolio.
Is this pretty typical in St. Lucia of other employers and other industries to take care of people like this?
I don't know what the situation is at the resorts. Usually, you know, I can't speak at large, but most of the resorts are from foreign companies, and I don't know what the policies are there. Most of the resorts are not St. Lucian based, so they either European based or American based. So not sure on case by case basis, but again, as I said, if you're not in, you know, if you're not working in the resort, you're probably in agriculture and with banana trade or at the distillery.
I'm curious, when you talked about Bounty before being super popular amongst the locals, you know, outside of the resorts. I'm just curious to get a sense of like, how do the locals drink the rum? Like, do they drink it straight? Is there a cocktail culture? Like, is there a sort of rum punch mix they like? You know, I'm just sort of curious how they drink it locally.
Drink it with Sprite or any other mixer like that. Also, they love bitter flavors there. So they consume lots of Campari. So rum and Campari is very common. Rum and fresh coconut water is a big thing too. I guess those are the unusual things to us, like rum Campari, rum coconut water. Everything else like Sprite, soda, Coca-Cola, all those things are consumed as well.
Rum and Campari, like, is that like 50-50? Like, how are they doing that typically?
If you go to a rum shack on St. Lucia, I doubt they'll measure anything. It'll just be like whatever goes in your glass, you know. But now the cocktail culture is growing more. You know, we trying to bring some of that onto the island. We did a Mai Tai competition with chairmans a couple years ago. That's supposed to happen every 2 years. Of course, that got postponed. So people are getting more of in a fancier cocktail culture. But yeah, I think loving bitter flavors comes from the tradition of spiced rum, because a lot of the elements in spiced rum are gonna be bitter. And that's how originally spiced rum came about. It was just a way of masking bitter medicinal flavors. To drink while you're healing from whatever disease or trouble you have. So yeah, bitter flavors is a big tradition. And then that bois bandé that we put in Bounty spice and chairman spice on its own, it's pretty bitter. If you infuse it into rum with other things, it kind of give it like sarsaparilla quality. So it gives it a different kind of dimension.
Ania, I had a quick question for the legacy. I know you said it's been hard to find. I know someone was mentioning where it was. What's roughly its price point?
It would be in the mid-30s.
Okay. It's been a fan favorite for those in the call and the chat.
I know, I just discovered 94 messages in here. Oh my God.
You've been presenting, so you couldn't see. But yeah, it's been a fan favorite. I like the 1931, but I know that 1931 is roughly about $100 depending on where. But legacy for $30 seems like a good compromise.
I had a quick question, Ania, if I could, about the we didn't really touch on it tonight, the Admiral Rodney line of rums from St. Lucia. I mean, kind of where does that sit from your perspective, and you know, in the repertoire of St. Lucia Distillers? Like, how do they position Admiral Rodney?
So Admiral Rodney is all column distilled rum, all three expressions, but they all come from the lowest plate of that coffee still. So the distillate, it's made out of the distillate with the most pungents and fatty acids that carry the flavor, hence the price point. So price point wise, it's probably the highest in our portfolio. We have 3 regular expressions, Princessa, the youngest blend, and then Royal Oak, which is in the middle, and the original Admiral Rodney, and then the oldest blend is Formidable. So again, they don't really care about age statements, but I talk about it just to differentiate them from each other. Princessa is a 5 to 7 year blend. Royal Oak is generally 7 to 9, and Formidable is 9 to 12. Princessa also has a little bit of rum finish and port cask in it, just a touch. So, but you know, in a nutshell, as a line, it's a premium column distilled rum. I'd say it's a really nice way to introduce somebody who comes from, you know, the bourbon world and loving bourbon. It's super approachable. And I mean, I haven't met a person who hasn't liked Admiral Rodney. It's very, very soft and delicate and approachable.
Yeah, Admiral Rodney is probably one of my favorite rum. The original one, I did get a chance to try the 3 new expressions, or 4, if there's, I think, a ruby one, I can't remember.
Yeah, we also now have limited expressions of Admiral Rodney. That's called Officer's Release, and those are the blends that are going to be different from year to year. So we've just done number 1, and that's gone at this point. We on to number 2. I know Shaker had number 1, maybe somebody else, but that's all I can think of in Texas. And yes, you can buy it online through Passion Spirits. I know getting things shipped to Texas alcohol wise could be kind of tricky, but we usually sell those things on Passion Spirits website.
What's the price range on those?
It ranges from 50s to retail wise, I want to say 80s, something like that.
Yeah, Kevin, if you've never tried the original Admiral Rodney, I highly recommend that as the base, because then you see how the expressions add more nuance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Nice. I'd like to try that. Yeah.
Yeah, for a very long time, it still might be true. I just haven't been able to find, or actually haven't purchased a bottle of Admiral Rodney in a while. But to me, Admiral Rodney for a very long time was my favorite rum, period.
That says a lot.
This was great, Ania. Really appreciate it.
Well, hopefully it was good insight into St. Lucian rum production. I know it's hard to pinpoint those rums in style because they make so many, and even within, you know, even within Chairman's line or Admiral Rodney line, there are so many different expressions. So hopefully it helped, and hopefully I got some fans of St. Lucian rum here now.
So when rum production first started in St. Lucia in potentially the 30s or maybe a little earlier, was it primarily made for just local consumption? Was it being exported? Like, what were the brands back then? Like all the brands that we know today, like when did they start?
So when the distillers merged, they created Bounty, and it was, yes, for local consumption. That's why, you know, Bounty is a spirit of St. Lucia now. Historically, just ended up being that way. Chairman's was the brand that they created for export, and that was created in '99. Locals don't drink Chairman's. We are actually trying to change that because it's an amazing, wonderful spirit. You know, if they drink something more expensive, it would be for status, and it would be things like whiskey or Hennessy or anything else imported. Does it answer your question?
Yeah, but was there ever any like bulk export? Because I know like for a while, like Hamilton and others were doing independent bottlings, but I know that that's not a thing anymore. So what's the impetus for that?
As far as selling in bulk, we don't do that anymore. Not that I know, we don't do that anymore. They did sell in bulk to private bottlers and private labels. And yes, that was at Hamilton, and there was Plantation at some point, I believe. But as you know, the people don't usually like talking about it because they're not responsible for what happens to it after they sell it. So they don't want the name of the distillery on that distillate necessarily. When we started working with with them, our mission was to bring St Lucian rum under St Lucian rum name outside of St Lucia. So yes, there were private bottlers. They sold rum in bulk before, but we don't do that anymore.
Thank you.
Does it answer the question?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I had one question that sort of came up when Kevin mentioned his honeymoon. I spent my honeymoon in Fiji, and there is a Bounty rum there. Is there any sort of dispute between St. Lucia Distillers Bounty and the Fijian Bounty, or just like let each one be their own thing and that's it?
I didn't even know there was a Fijian rum. I don't think so. I mean, is it exported?
I do not think so. I bought it locally there, but I've never seen it elsewhere.
I feel like if it was, then there would be an issue. But because, I mean, we took Bounty to global distribution now, so I don't know what would happen if the other guys decide to do the same.
There's no sense in having like a GI, I guess, for St. Lucia, since they kind of control what happens with everything, right? Or is that ever?
Yeah, exactly. And then also they make such a variety of styles. I mean, they don't care about dosage anyway. So beyond that, like, how would you qualify that? Admiral Rodney falls probably stylistically more into Puerto Rican style rum than more so in English style rum, like Angostura. So I don't know, how would you even attach GI to that? I don't know.
Anybody else have questions for Ania?
Yeah, I've got one. How many countries do y'all have distribution in?
Oh, numbers. I'll give you not so straight answer. We sell most of our rum in European countries. So the majority of our business is like global company. It's European countries. I mean, we in all Europe, we in Asia, US, Canada, some, and that's about it. So some idea, right? I think US market is overall about 10% of our business, rum business.
Is that how does that compare to like JM or Mont?
Oh, I'm talking about for the whole Spiribam portfolio.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are rookie numbers. We got to get those numbers up.
Yeah, I know. I think it comes for, so another fun fact for you guys. We sell majority of our rum in other countries in retail. It's about 80 to 20% split. Where here it's the opposite. We sell a majority of our rum in on-premise world, which is bars and restaurants, and the small amount in retail. I think it's just culturally, people drink better booze in other countries just off the shelf in general, where here people usually start experimenting and trying new things in their favorite bar or a restaurant. Retail wise, people usually buy what they know and like already. It's hard to get people to try new things in retail. So yeah, I agree, that needs to change.
Yeah, we need more bars. We need rum bars, and I mean, obviously in Austin and throughout the country.
Yeah, I think it's just the problem is just general population taste level. Not to sound terrible, but American palate is just not developed enough for better spirits or wines. And prohibition is a big part of it. We lost a whole generation who didn't know how to drink, and then we had fast 80s with all the sweet, terrible mixers and all that monstrosity. So yeah, there were a few gaps in American drinking history that kind of put us behind, I think.
Yeah, I totally get that. When I have some of my friends come over, they don't want the more interesting stuff. They don't want the hotter stuff. They sort of want to stick to the safer things, or and cocktails and stuff with different syrups and mixers in it. I mean, I'll get them to branch out occasionally because I'll force them to. But I totally agree with that.
Yeah, yeah.
Speaking to what John just said, I mean, he mentioned like hotter spirits. I mean, I think, is anything we tasted tonight above, what, 45%? Like, I think besides the master selection, which we didn't get into, which seemed to be kind of more select single cask bottlings. What does St. Lucia have as far as kind of cask strength or higher than 45% offerings?
Tons, but it's now released in small batch expressions. So whatever's coming here, you know, in small batch expressions is going to be small batch is not going to be at cask strength. It's going to be a little bit proof down, but it you know, a lot of times it'll be in the 50s and high 40s. But as far as our regular blends in lineup, it's milder because we want it to be in retail. And you guys are exception usually, who want those kind of things. So that's why we have small batch and single casks now.
We're special, but not in a good way.
That's debatable.
Yeah, John R. had just been in California and brought back the K&L select of the chairman's selection, the 8-year at like 56 or so.
Yeah.
Very unique expression.
Go grab it.
Yeah, I think it is a blend of the John Dore and Vendome. I'm not sure. I think it was a pure pot still. I don't think there was any column in that. Maybe I'm wrong.
So as far as Texas goes, well, I'll have Austin Shaker is not gonna have chairman small batch. They'll have JM small batch. Alamo will have chairman small batch master selection. Oasis in Houston. Tony K's through Lalo in Houston as well. They'll have JM and chairman's masters. But once everything comes here, I'll post a whole list of the retailers because I can't think of all of them right now on top of my head. But I'll post things that you can find and where they are.
John's holding up that master selection he just picked up.
Nice.
Yeah, I think the big takeaway always is, you know, like the distributors for you know the brands that you represent, more than likely a lot of independent shops already carry other products that they carry, so they can always get the St. Lucia rums or the Clements or JM. So you just got to ask your neighborhood store to carry it because they have access to it. They just don't know you want it unless you ask for it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Anybody else got anything? All right, we covered it. Good job.
This is really awesome.
Thank you. Talk.
Thank you.
It was a lot of fun.
Thank you, Anya.
Thank you, Anya.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for showing up and tasting all this stuff, and don't hesitate to reach out if you need anything or have more questions.
Thank you for being so generous with your time. Very appreciated. Yeah.
Yeah, excellent job. Thanks a lot. Really was good.
Thanks, Anya.
Thank you.
Delicious. Thank you, Anya.